Lions linked to Diego Pavia. Should Detroit actually make this move? Training camp hasn't even officially opened yet, and the Detroit Lions are already caught up in one of the juiciest quarterback rumors of the summer. A name just landed on Detroit's doorstep that nobody expected, and it's got Lions fans everywhere arguing in the comments. That name is Diego Pavia, the Heisman Trophy runner-up who turned Vanderbilt football into a national story, and he just got cut loose by the Baltimore Ravens days before training camp opens. Now national reporters are floating the Lions as a landing spot, and today on Detroit Scope, we're breaking down exactly why this rumor exists, whether it actually makes sense, and why it might be one of the most dangerous distractions Dan Campbell could invite into his building this summer. Let's start with who Diego Pavia even is, because if you haven't been following college football closely, this name might be brand new to you. Pavia spent his final 2 seasons at Vanderbilt after stops at New Mexico Military Institute and New Mexico State, and what he did with the Commodores was nothing short of a miracle. Vanderbilt is a program that has spent most of the last 2 decades being an afterthought in the SEC, a school more associated with baseball than football. Pavia walked in and completely flipped the script. In 2025 alone, he threw for over 3,500 yards and nearly 30 touchdowns, dragged Vanderbilt to 10 wins, knocked off ranked SEC opponents on the road, and put the Commodores in serious playoff contention for the first time in program history. That kind of run doesn't happen by accident. It happens because you've got a fearless, gritty competitor under center who refuses to lose. He finished the season as the runner-up for the Heisman Trophy, an incredible achievement for a kid who started his career at a junior college. And yet, when the 2026 NFL Draft rolled around, Diego Pavia's name never got called. Not in the first round, not in the 7th round, nowhere. He became the first Heisman finalist to go undrafted since 2014, and that fact alone tells you something strange was happening behind the scenes. It wasn't about his production, because the production was undeniable. It came down to measurements. Pavia was listed at 5'9" coming out of college, and when he showed up to the NFL Combine, he measured in at 5'10" and an eighth. In a league that loves its quarterbacks tall, that number scared teams off, even with the tape sitting right there proving he could win football games at the highest level of college football. The Baltimore Ravens eventually took a flyer on him, signing him to a 3-year deal as an undrafted free agent to compete for a spot as QB3 behind Lamar Jackson. But just days ago, with training camp bearing down, the Ravens decided to move on, waiving Pavia and setting him loose to find a new home. That release is exactly what put Detroit into this conversation. USA Today's Nick Brinkerhoff pointed out that the Lions quarterback room behind Jared Goff currently consists of Teddy Bridgewater and Luke Altmaier, and argued that Detroit could be a perfect landing spot for Pavia, given how well his relentless, blue-collar mentality would fit the city and the football team. It's not the craziest idea on paper. The Lions do need to figure out what their quarterback depth chart looks like beyond Goff, and if Pavia is available for next to nothing, why not take a look? But before we get too far down this road, it's worth remembering something important. This isn't the first time Jared Goff has had a smaller, scrappy backup nipping at his heels, and the ghost of that situation might still be haunting him a little bit. Back with the Los Angeles Rams, Goff found himself in a genuine quarterback battle with John Wolford, an undersized, athletic passer who pushed Goff hard enough that it became a real storyline. It wasn't just noise either. Wolford actually got starts and had Goff looking over his shoulder for a stretch. Now, John Wolford at 6 feet tall is not a perfect stylistic match for Diego Pavia, but the parallel is close enough to make you pause. Both are undersized, athletic, competitive gamers who make defenders' lives miserable and who fans fall in love with the second they show a pulse in a preseason game. And that's exactly the concern here. Jared Goff is entrenched as the unquestioned starter in Detroit. That part isn't in doubt. But give Diego Pavia one electric preseason snap, one 40-yard scramble where he's flexing and screaming and pumping up the crowd, and you know exactly what happens next. Social media lights up, highlight clips flood every platform, and suddenly a portion of the fan base is clamoring for a bigger role for a guy who was signed as an afterthought. We saw this exact movie before it even happened with rookie quarterback Hendon Hooker, when fans were calling for him to start before he'd thrown a single professional pass. Now imagine that energy attached to a Heisman finalist with SEC hardware and a chip on his shoulder the size of Nashville. Here's the thing though, and it's worth being fair about it. Nobody in their right mind believes Diego Pavia walks into Allen Park and unseats Jared Goff as the starting quarterback. That is not happening, not this year, not with the season Goff is coming off of and the contract he's holding. The real question isn't about the starting job at all. It's about the backup job. Right now, the competition sits between Teddy Bridgewater, a steady veteran presence, and Luke Altmaier, a younger arm the Lions organization has reportedly shown real interest in developing. If Pavia comes to Detroit, the actual battle worth watching is whether he can leapfrog Altmaier for QB2 or QB3 duties, not whether he threatens Goff's job security in any way. Bringing him in for a training camp look, letting him compete, seeing what he's got against real NFL pressure. There's an argument that it costs the Lions almost nothing. If it doesn't work out, you simply release him, and the roster carries on exactly as it would have anyway. But there's a flip side to that logic, and it's the exact reason plenty of Lions fans, and even some inside the building, might push back on this idea entirely. This Detroit Lions team has built its entire identity over the past few seasons around one specific mantra. And it's not flash, it's focus. Dan Campbell has made it a point of emphasis to drown out outside noise, to keep the circus away from the building, and to let performance on the field do the talking rather than headlines and hot takes. We just watched this exact philosophy play out with the schedule release, where the outside chatter got loud, and Campbell's response was simply to post the schedule and move forward without engagement. That's the era the Lions are trying to build. A team defined by quiet, business-like preparation, led by guys who show up, put their collar on, and go to work without needing the spotlight. Diego Pavia, through no fault of his own, brings the opposite energy. He is publicity. He is highlight reels. He is a story that follows him into every building he walks into, because that's exactly the story that made him famous in the first place. For an organization that has intentionally tried to strip drama out of its quarterback room, inviting in one of the most talked about backup quarterback storylines in the league feels like it goes against everything Detroit has been building toward. There's also a deeper pattern worth acknowledging here, because Diego Pavia's entire career has been one long story of being overlooked and then overachieving anyway. He started at a junior college and dominated. He transferred up to New Mexico State and kept winning. He landed in the SEC, arguably the most competitive conference in the sport, took over a Vanderbilt program that had been irrelevant for the better part of 2 decades, and turned it into a Heisman conversation and a near-playoff team. Every single stop, people doubted the size, doubted the arm talent as a traditional pocket passer, and every single stop he answered by winning anyway. That kind of resume earns respect, and it's exactly why so many people find this rumor exciting on the surface. There's something magnetic about a player who has spent his entire life proving people wrong, and Lions fans in particular tend to gravitate toward exactly that kind of underdog story, because in a lot of ways it mirrors the identity of this current Detroit Lions era under Dan Campbell. So where does that leave us? On one hand, you have a genuinely talented, tough, undersized gamer sitting on the open market for next to nothing, a player whose college production would make almost any front office curious enough to take a look. On the other hand, you have a Detroit Lions organization that has spent the last few seasons intentionally building a culture around quiet consistency, one that might see more risk than reward in bringing a media magnet into a quarterback room that's already settled behind Jared Goff. There's a real chance the Lions bring Pavia in for a training camp workout just to see what's there, and there's an equally real chance they pass entirely and let another franchise deal with the circus. Either way, this is a storyline worth watching as camp opens, because if Pavia ends up anywhere in the NFC North, opposing coordinators are going to have to spend real time preparing for him, even in the preseason. All right, Lions fans, that's where we stand on the Diego Pavia rumor heading into training camp. We want to hear from you on this one. Drop a comment and let us know, yay or nay, should the Detroit Lions bring Diego Pavia in for a workout? And listen, before you go, we here at Detroit Scope are working hard to hit 1,000 subscribers on this channel, and we cannot do that without you. If you're watching this and you haven't subscribed yet, please take 2 seconds and hit that button. It genuinely means everything to us, and it helps this channel keep growing. Smash that like button if you enjoyed this breakdown, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe so you never miss another Detroit Lions story. We'll see you in the next one.